Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story: landlord who's a scumbag tries to extort me, harass me, tries to get me fired. The second story: punk kids go through my shed and trash it, lure them back in a month later and chase them with a baseball bat. The third story: stole my $5 package, eat SH, literally. On to the first story. Try to extort, harass, and ruin me? I'll make sure you're rightfully convicted of disability fraud. I lived in an illegal rental in a place you'd call a landlord's market. There was a housing shortage, and although I had a great job, no credit problems, no background issues, it was impossible to rent somewhere affordable because of my dog. I eventually found a great place, but it came with a nutty landlord. She lived on the property. I'm not a choosing beggar, however, so I take it. For 12 months, I endure the landlord's violation of my rights, taking deposits she should not have, micromanaging my personal life and my guests, and it's pretty awful. She's always high on painkillers with tiny pen needle pupils, telling me weird SH, and trapping me in conversation I'd rather not hear. Faced with homelessness, I take the trampling of my rights and privacy. She made me miserable. After a year, I had enough. She crossed the line when she had my boyfriend removed by the police when I was at work one day. He had been staying about 48 hours. I was gone for 2 weeks at home and arrived back to my rental 48 hours before this. No one was in my rental while I was gone. On top of tossing my boyfriend out, she delivered a bill for his rent and utilities for staying the past 2 weeks that I was gone. No one was in my house. She already bullied me. I guess she thought she could extort me. She created fake court paperwork to intimidate me. The bills I receive from her are insane. They're not the writings of a lucid human. She gets all sorts of details wrong and makes personal statements that are inappropriate. The place was empty and I was gone, but she wrote a bill and insisted I pay for his tenancy. This is when SH hit the fan. I finally stood my ground. Extortion is the limit. Everything is falsified. I think it was the Vicodin talking and making her brave. As an aside that will be super relevant later, her employer had an open fraud case against her. She told me early in my tenancy because she dared them to come after her. Perhaps she should not have dared so hard. After the fake tenancy debacle, SH gets real. I take off work to read up on my rights and protect my dog and stuff. She starts harassing me. Specifically, she did these things over the course of a few days. 1. Called from a blocked number and asked for a stripper/call girl. 2. Called my work as a new landlord seeking a reference and told them I was partying, why I wasn't at work. 3. Came into my yard at 11 at night, stomped up on my porch to scare me, then walked out of the yard saying it was a free country when asked what the heck she was doing. 4. Called the police and sent them to my job. I work with kids, claiming she found drugs in my house. Needless to say, I was pretty freaked out by all these things. I got a TRO against her. She couldn't keep trying to ruin my career and get my dog euthanized and attempting to intimidate me. It was good for 3 years. I was happy I won in court. It was a great move for my safety and empowerment. However, when I did move, about 10 days after her extortion, she falsified documents, kept my deposit, and I was forced to go back to court to get my money. Again, I won, and although it took a lot of time and energy, eventually it was garnished from her account. I not only got out of my lease rightfully, but took my deposit money back against her will. I had a restraining order for 3 years, and she did not know my new address. I was thrilled. The torment she put me through is unbelievable. So let's cut to the revenge. Remember that fraud case that she boasted about? Well, it came back to bite her. Landlord boldly did construction, high as a kite on Vicodin, while collecting disability because she was wheelchair bound. See the issue here? She played the system to get into paid early retirement, ate pills all day, increased her property value by building up her space, and collected money from illegal rentals. 4 months before I moved out, she was doing construction, and I had a strange feeling I should document her fraud. I knew she could turn on me at any point, and well, I'm glad I had the foresight to do so. She had gone to work the first day of her contract and fallen out of a wheelchair on a ramp that was not up to code. Almost 4 weeks later to the day, she was happily at home, continuing with her activities, building a tool shed from scratch. She was doing construction with no wheelchair, duh. She was bold and figured she could never get caught. She was doing all sorts of physical activity. I decided to film her and made sure the date was noted. I also took pictures. Some part of me just knew I should document what I was seeing because she was an awful human who was leeching off the system. She worked in education and she couldn't be fired. Her position was tenured and she was holding her spot while on medical leave for over 4 years. They legally could not hire a new teacher. Substitutes poured in and out of her classroom. Hundreds of children missed out on a legitimate education because she held her spot. She was scum. I worked in a similar field, so I knew what damage she was doing with her actions. Back to the eviction/TRO event. Shortly after moving out, when the restraining order was in effect, I went to her employer and offered evidence in his fraud case. It was a serious state-led fraud case against her. They were going after her. He was elated that I had such strong evidence. He put me in touch with private investigators. I handed over the evidence after sitting down with them and giving my statement of her activity and how she was mobile at home. I didn't have to exaggerate, and I didn't have to lie. I just told them exactly what happened. Even if she didn't burn me, I felt like I was doing my civic duty by ensuring the kids had a real teacher in their classroom instead of this piece of garbage. Months later, I called the investigators and found out my evidence was what really sealed the deal. She was convicted of disability fraud. She was fired from her position and was potentially going to pay back years' worth of disability payments. I did that. I am the reason her scam fell apart. She thought she could bully me into extortion. She didn't. She thought she could ruin my career and hurt my dog when I stood up to her. She didn't. In fact, I won. It was what I needed, to be empowered after she SH on me. It wasn't even revenge as much as standing up for myself. If she did have to pay it back, she'd only have her house to pay with. My dream is that she lost her house, ended up a renter, and just hopes for a kind landlord. The next story is The Wrath of the Stoner Art Student. As the title says, I'm an art student. I live with my parents while I'm in college to cut living expenses. A couple of years ago, my dad had a security system installed that came with 2 cameras to set up. One pointed at the side door and driveway, one pointed at the street by the front door, so you can see the cars. It has an app we all installed on our phones that gives us alerts. I also have this shed I asked my parents if I could use for most of my art, as it gets messy. I would always clean up after myself, but paint still stains the carpet, and if I had to smell that tangerine floor cleaner one more time, I was gonna barf. I fixed it up a bit. Still looks crappy, but it's mine. Took about 2 weeks to set up. We also have a problem of people going through cars, a lot, like ridiculously so. I have a crap Ford Tempo that I never kept anything important in, so I didn't care. The incident. As I said, I have an art shed, and I'm a student of the visual communications program in my local college. My professor had given us our term assignment, which was basic but fun. Pick a piece that was in the textbook and either write a 10-page essay on it or do a recreation with a 2-page blurb of how you copied the techniques, yada yada. I was stoked because Van Gogh was covered in there, and I wanted to do a piece called Cafe Terrace. It's a gorgeous piece, and I put a lot of time and effort into this thing. But one night my phone gives me an alert from the security system while I'm at a small party, get-together, and I see a blurry image of the 3 teens running past my door. I think odd, but I wasn't home to check it out immediately. When I get home from being driven by a friend from a party, I get back to see my car door ajar, and I roll my eyes because it's annoying but not new. But then I remember the alert on my phone and went to check around the house. Check the shed last because there's a lock on it. It'll be fine, right? I live in Canada. Who's gonna break into my shed? When I get to my shed, it's trashed, lock on the ground. The material I hung up to over the ceiling was ripped and burned. All works of art I put on the walls were ripped down. My paint was everywhere, and my pastels were stomped on. They even broke my effing little SH stool I nicknamed Hermit. But the worst was my term project was destroyed, cut apart and then repeatedly smashed, with my mother effing bong. My 9mm glass beaker bong that I got as a present, 2 weeks before I had to turn that effing project in. I was livid. The revenge. I was able to get a week's extension as I emailed my professor and sent him photos including the security alert and contacted the police about the destruction of property. Cleanup was a couple days, and I did manage to turn my project in on time without the extension by just not going to sleep. First one was better, but hey. I was still peeved though. I kept thinking of ways on how to catch them or lure them in and scare the crap out of them. So I left change, loonies and toonies, stuff they would go for, and 5s in my car's console. Left my doors unlocked and at the front of the house. I turned on that camera, as it had been off for a while because it would go off a lot, and I kept a bat in the shed and the side door. No guarantee it'll be the same idiots, but I keep hoping. A few people picked my car, but it wasn't those turds, so I waved it off. A month later and a few days after my final exams, I'm in the shed at 2 a.m. smoking and sketching something when the alert goes off. It's the front camera, and I see 3 familiar-looking blurs ransacking my car. I grab the bat, and before I set out, I hear them coming towards my shed. I flick the string of lights off and let them get closer before I jump out with a bat in hand. One of them screams so loud before they book it, and I run after them to scare them away. I'm bad at running and fully expect them to outpace me. But one of them cuts across my front lawn and slipped on wet grass. He biffs it and I catch up to him and grab him by the back of his hoodie with the bat, threatening him. "Were you the ones who trashed my shed?" I'm sorry, I won't do it again. The F's your name. Matthew. His name was not Matthew. "Give me your effing wallet." The dude throws it and I let go of him to retrieve it and he runs off. Whatever. I pocketed my 5+, what I'm assuming was another $40 of stolen money. Take a look at his wallet, and his high school ID with his real name was there. Facebooked his mom and told her what happened, and emailed the school as well, mentioning I was a previous student there and that I was devastated that this is how the school teaches children. The mom turned up at my door with another mom and an older dude and the 3 turdlings. They had to apologize to me in person. Isn't that nice? The last story is, go ahead, buddy, keep stealing packages. Eventually, you're not going to like what you get. My area has a problem with porch pirates, and the cops are thoroughly useless. Your camera isn't good enough to prove the thief's identity, the stolen package wasn't valuable enough, there's always some excuse for just letting it go. At least one lives in my apartment complex, but management can't even make a case for eviction without the cops being willing to at least say, yeah, that's our suspect. So the problem only seems to get worse and worse every week. Today I got hit again. It was a $5 package of sewing supplies. It was left on my doorstep with photo proof, but by the time I got there, it was gone. Now I'm sitting here in the middle of a crisis, making a point not to go out to a store for anything I can wait for, and some jerk-off saw my attempt to not get them sick as a golden opportunity for free stuff, so I'm just sitting here thinking, well, gee, that's rather rude. But I wasn't going to dwell on this. I had chores to do, namely my cat's litter boxes needed cleaning. So I got an empty mailing box and got to work. But there wasn't really enough to fill the box, so I started thinking, do we have anything else similarly awful around here? And that was when I found my jar of failed sourdough starter. I didn't close it well enough, a couple bugs got in, and predictability ensued from there. I'd been dreading cleaning that jar out for months. I'd had it sealed up to kill the bugs and keep us from smelling it, and I'd considered throwing it out altogether, but it was a nice jar, so I didn't want to do that. I finally decided to get it over with and clean it out. The jar's in the dishwasher as we speak. As for the contents, they're finally going to good use. And just to make it very clear how I felt about this, I left a little note with an applicable quote. Put some plastic wrap over the top of everything to keep the spoiled bread juice from soaking through the box when I flipped it back over. I opened the box from the bottom to keep the mailing labels intact. Left the note in there and here it is, the first of possibly many lovely gifts for the neighbors. Sadly, but also fortunately, there's no way to share a smell online, so I'm just gonna say I've been in porta potties that smelled better than the end result. Sure enough, the package is gone. Thanks for watching!